So, hey, you beautiful people, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the CSUN Performance Ensemble Presents a Conversation with podcast. My name is Jefferson Denim, and I'm one of the hosts.
And my name's Fernando, and I'm the other host.
Right. And so this podcast is really about anything and everything you might want to know about performance ensemble. Maybe you've heard a little bit about it, maybe you've heard a lot about it, and you just don't know exactly where to go for more information. Well, this is the spot and this is the time. And so we are going to start off our inaugural episode with a very special guest, Mr. Holden Streetly, who is a recent grad of CSUN and has participated in performance ensemble.
Hi.
Hello. So Fernando and I just want to start off with two quick questions. First of all, what pronouns do you prefer so we can be respectful of you? And secondly, just tell us, we're going to get into more, I promise you, my brother, but tell us a little bit about yourself as well.
Okay, so hi, I'm Holden, as was brought up. I just graduated Comm Studies, class 2020. My pronouns are he, him, she, her, they, them, anything, as long as it's respectful. I identify as gender fluid, so it's just kind of like, just depends on the day, really. But by and large, I typically just go by he, him. Yeah, and like I said, so CSUN Communication Studies recent grad, LGBT activist, currently working at the Trevor Project. Really into Steven Universe. Yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Beautiful. Well, what we're going to do for this inaugural episode is we're going to break down, Holden, this is your life. And we're going to break it into 3 acts because we're all theater people here. Mm-hmm. So we'll just kind of call Act 1, say, from the time you were born through middle school, let's say. And all the trauma that entails. And then Act 2 will be middle school through college, okay? And then Act 3 will specifically focus on performance ensemble and that entity, because I think it deserves its own act, all right? So, Holden Streetly, when and where were you born?
So I was born September 5th, 1994 in Simi Valley. I was born, oh man, I was an accident, and a big accident. My mom had me,
a happy accident.
You know. My mom had me when she was 17. I always used to joke that I'm in her prom photos, even though she didn't really have a prom as far as I know. But yeah, so my mom had me when she was 17. I was the byproduct of like a very, as far as I've been told, an inappropriate relationship between her and one of our neighbors. Yeah, and we lived with my grandmother and my 2 aunts and my grandfather for a huge chunk of my life growing up, actually, like a huge chunk of my life growing up. Also, please feel free to cut me off whenever. No,
this is actually great because you're dovetailing into a lot of stuff that we're very interested in. So you're growing up. So you grew up in a family dynamic where, because sometimes it's separated, isn't it? Where the grandparents are off in that town, or in this town. You guys are all together, right? Yeah. And you're growing up in that dynamic, and with a mom so young. Yeah. Are you guys like super close, or was it like having an older sister? What was that like?
So my mom growing up, so my family has a lot of like generational trauma as well. That's very, very like, apparent. So my mom growing up was kind of like a problem child. So she like got into fights a lot, whatever. Looking back, like me and my aunts have kind of, we figure that it's either that she was like potentially undiagnosed bipolar, or I am of the belief that it might have been like borderline personality disorder, potentially due to like some unknown about like sexual trauma. But this is all, a lot of this is speculation, right? But she was basically just like a huge problem. She would like jump from school to school to school. The reason she didn't have a prom was because she had been expelled from the school district, I believe, at that point, and was at a continuation school in our school district. So she had me, and I was like the culmination of just like years and years and years of my mom kind of being this problem child and like garnering a lot of attention from my grandparents and my aunts, just kind of like, you know, like wanting to be like normal teenage girls and like do their thing, but then having this sister who is just like so complicated, and, you know, made things really difficult. So there's actually like a lot of tension between my aunts and my mom. And once I was born, they might not have been living in the house when I was born. I might be misremembering, because, you know, I was like an infant. So I don't have like a really clear image of everything that was happening. But I know for sure that I lived with my grandmother and my grandfather and my mom for a long time. And my aunt, one of my aunts was living with us. The other one ended up moving out and starting like her own family, but she comes back like way later. But I mean, she was around for the whole time, but she comes back later. But yeah, so the dynamic was like kind of interesting, because there was a lot of tension between my mom and my aunt that lived in the house. And I didn't see too much of it, because like, honestly, my mom was like in and out of jail for most of my childhood. So like, I didn't really like see her all the time. There were like long periods where I would just be like at home with just my grandmother and my aunt, who did a great job of raising me and taking care of me. They were like wonderful. But yeah, it's odd. Like the family dynamics, a little weird.
No, I mean, think about, and Fernando and I were talking about this the other day, and I'm going to just pose this to you too, because a lot of the trauma that we feel, everyone's got issues, everyone's got something they've gone through, right?
Yeah.
And so what you were unpacking, and thank you for being so honest and open about all this. Side note, I think, and we're going to get to this again when we get to PE, Performance Ensemble, but I find you to be just a wonderfully open soul.
Thank you.
And the way you express things that can be looked at as like, oh my gosh, that's real trauma for a kid and for a young adult. And your honesty inspires us to be honest with ourselves. And so I applaud your courage for just being so, you may not think it is, but I think it is, the courage to address what's been going on with you. Now, when you were describing your growing up in years and your mom going in and out of jail, I mean, did you make any big decisions about that, or just think, oh, that's the way life is?
God, the big decision. That's such an interesting way to characterize it. I don't know if I ever made any like big decisions. I think most of my childhood and a large part of my relationship with my mom, even today, was predicated on this large decision of like, do I trust and love this person, or do I not? And like, if I do, what does that look like? And if I don't, what does that look like? And that's something that I've grappled with for like, you know, so long. Cause like, so eventually things with my mom started to get really, like really physical. Like she would like get physically aggressive with me and physically violent with me. And that's when that one aunt who I was like, oh, she like kind of left the picture. She like started stepping in. She was like a child development major. She was like, she might have still been working on her BA and her teaching credential at the time. She's a preschool teacher now. She's great. But she kind of stepped in and was like, this is not a good situation for you. Like, you know, you're like a kid, like you're developing and you need support. And she also she lived in the same town. So it was still like, you were talking earlier about, you know, like closeness of the family. Like we weren't all in the same house, but we all were in Simi Valley. So she was still close, and I would go over there, and like there I had, because I ended up having multiple siblings and we would all have to share a room. But like when I was at her house, like I would have my own space, and like, it was like a very like clean and like kind of organized environment. Like she only had one child, so just like lots of space. And she's also a child development major, so she would just like spend time with us. She like knew, you know, she wasn't expending so much emotional energy being my mom, because being my mom is she, as I said, she's a complicated person. So she had the energy to like invest in me, like as a person, and to like help me like be who I was. And I started to realize, I was like, maybe my mom not so good of a person, because growing up I wanted nothing more than to spend time with her and to be with her, because she was like, she's like a 20-year-old, like, to me in some ways she almost felt like an older sister. Like, she'd be like, I'm gonna go to the liquor store, like it's 11 o'clock at night, but I'm gonna walk down the street to the liquor store, and I'd be like, oh my God, please take me with you, like I want to go, I want to be walking around with you, you're like so cool. And so I started to like really vacillate between this, like, oh my God, my mom is like the coolest person in the world, and like she's like an outlaw, and like I sympathize and I empathize with her, to like, wow, my mom is like a fuck up and she's like horrible and she hits me and all these things. And like, I think a really telling thing about that was like, I was really starting to lean into the like, I hate my mom, I hate her, I hate her, I hate her. And my aunt always tells me the story about how I came home from school one day and she was the one who had to be like, hey, like, your mom got sent back to jail today. And like, I burst into tears and just like collapsed on the ground. Mind you, like, this was at a period in my life where I was starting to be like, oh, I hate my mom. Like, I don't like being around her. But it was just this deeply complicated, like you put it, like this decision that I was having to make of like, do I love this person or do I not love this person? Do I not trust them? Do I trust them? And what does that look like? And that was very complicated in many, many ways. And then, yeah.
That is profound what you just said. And I don't think anyone listening would not be able to see that, because we all have those junctures. We all have those decision-making moments in our lives. And now, do you see that moment or moments like that playing out in your adult life? Meaning, does it poison any relationships close relationships you have?
Absolutely. I have mad attachment issues, because like when I was growing up, my mom, as I said, I mean, this is the thing. I have a lot of empathy for my mother, because I recognize that like the situation she in, while it was her own doing, like, is a shitty situation. I can't imagine having a child now at 25 years old. I'm an incredibly selfish person in many ways. I'm like, I don't want no fucking kid, excuse my French, up in my business. Do I want children eventually? Absolutely. But like, I'm always telling my boyfriend, I'm like, when we're like 35, like when I am like tired and I'm like, you know what? I'm down to sit at home with a child and like watch Teletubbies for like half an hour. That sounds great. So to her, I look back and I'm like, wow, being like 18 with a human infant that is like, I want you, like, I love you, would be so hard. So she would like, and my grandmother was very supportive and like was there. And like I said, like my grandmother's basically like in many ways my second mom. Like I love that woman to heaven and back. And so my mom would like go out and like go hang out with her friends and stuff. And I would just be so traumatized by this, because for me, it was not just a question of like, oh, mom's gonna go and hang out with her friends and come back a little bit later. Like, you're a child. For me, it was like, where are you going? You should be with me. And then on top of that, there were times where she would go and not come back because she would be, arrested, or she might go to jail. Like, and so it created this crazy complex in my mind where I have like mad attachment issues. And actually, when I started the relationship that I'm in now, that was the first time I started going to therapy, because I was like, he like wouldn't text me for an hour and I would be like having a full on like panic attack meltdown in my bed, like freaking out, like calling people and like sobbing, because I just I hadn't been in like an intimate relationship like that yet. And so it was like, oh, I had been in intimate relationships, but nothing like this intense. And so it was just like, it was awakening all this crap in me. So I started going to therapy, try and get that under control. And I still deal with it in some ways, absolutely, but not to the same extent. So yeah, it definitely, it echoes out. It does not, it radiates throughout life and relationships especially, I think.
I bet.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to, when we get to PE too, we're going to understand, I bet, how you express these things through your art. But so growing up, staying in Act One for a minute, and Fernando, you can cut me off because I can go on and on. I'm endlessly fascinated.
I'm ready to cut you off when the time's right.
Okay. So here you were, a young guy, and then do you remember what school, well, of course you do, but what are some of your memories of what school was like for you? And again, this Act One will end, say, around middle school. So what was school like given your home dynamic?
Yeah, so like I said, my mom was really crazy. So I actually spent kindergarten, first grade, and second grade in 3 separate schools because she would get into altercations with the administration and I would no longer be welcome on campus, basically. So that happened. I started at White Oak Elementary. They were like, Mom got into a fight with someone there. They were like, nope, got booted to Santa Susana Elementary School. Mom had beef with like an old professor, like one of my teachers my mom didn't like for some reason because she like had beef with her from when she was in high school or something, and so like it became this like weird like thing. There's also like a weird, I'm not gonna get into all that, but that, yeah, it was just like an odd situation. And then I finally landed at Garden Grove, and my mom managed to like, my family kind of like pulled the reins and was like, Amanda, like you need to like he needs a school. So by the time I got to second grade, I had settled in. I always had a really hard time like making friends in elementary school. It's really difficult for me to like make a lot of friends. I think in many ways because I was always like I was very effeminate, and like I actually have like distinct memory, like the gender identity thing, like the gender fluidity thing is kind of born out of the fact that it's like I'm trying to honor this part of myself that I have kind of cloistered away for a very long time. Like some of my earliest memories were of like playing with Barbies and like wanting to like put on girl clothes and like all that kind of stuff. And my family trying to like create space for that, but also still being, you know, like they were different times, right? And so I have like very early memories too, like around like age 8 or 9 or 10 of like telling neighbors like, oh, I'm getting gender reassignment surgery when I get older, like I'm gonna be a girl, like it is happening. And then like having experiences with my family where they were like, that is a very extreme thing to say, maybe you don't say that. And like I think by today's standards, that might be, I mean, even by then standards, like it's not the ideal thing to say, but I have a lot of empathy for where my family was coming from, and I recognize what it is that they were maybe trying to protect me from. But so my gender identity is a large part of trying to honor that part of myself from when I was younger. But the reason I brought that up is because I was very feminine, and so that kind of made me an easy target a lot of the time. I was also really sensitive as a kid. I remember in 3rd grade having this experience with a teacher where we were doing that did you ever do the lima bean project? Where you like grew lima beans in a bag to demonstrate that the lima beans didn't need soil to grow. And so you put them in the bag with the water and then they sprout. I like put in one too many staples or something in my lima bean bag, and like my teacher, Mr. and Mrs. Bullock, I will never forget, they were a married couple, team taught in like a bungalow together. Mr. and Mrs. Bullock, Mrs. Bullock got so, like she got very upset with me, and she was just kind of like, she was really terse and really short. And like, that was too much for little me. I was like, I think I'm ready for my lima beans or whatever. And then she's like, no, you messed up. You need to start over. You did the staples wrong. And I like took that little bag back to my chair and I cried so hard that like we had a special needs student in our class, and his aide like came over to me and like sat with me and was like, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna like walk through this. I also had that same teacher, she wrote on my report card one time, like, is often confused or is confused a lot of the time or something like that. And I'll never forget. I looked at my report card and I went up to her and I went, what does this mean? And she goes, this. And that was her response. And it wasn't until I was much older that I was like, oh, I get it. Like, I understand. Like,
wow, Holden. Did that, okay, now because you were having these kinds of experiences and you weren't able to go home to like a stable foundational place, you're always trying to find your home, if I could put it that way. Mm-hmm. Did you ever find yourself pre-therapy judging yourself for who you are?
I don't think so. As odd as that sounds, maybe.
That's beautiful. If you did not go there, that's a dark place. And the fact that you said, no, okay, everyone else, and I'm going to have my reactions to them. They're going to have reactions to me, but I know who I am. Do you think that's accurate?
Maybe it might be more I think bless little me's soul. I love little me. I think I was just kind of oblivious in many ways. Like I was just like, I had like gone through so much shit at home that I was like, this is fine. I was like, this is okay. I'm fine. Like, I don't know. I think my family, although it was a tumultuous space, like I really do want to recognize and elevate the fact that like my family like really, really like celebrated me and was very like, you are so smart, and like you like they really, really lifted me a lot. And like they were always like, I always say this about my mom. My mom and I have a very complicated relationship, and she, you know, often got me in weird situations at school where the administration would not like me because they would associate me with my mother. But like my mom was always like a ferocious advocate for me. Like if I was like, I'm being bullied, it was like she would be in that office and she'd be like, you better can fix this. Like my son is not going to be going to your school if he's fucking getting bullied. Like she was like mama bear, and like in her own complex and like problematic way, but like very much there, like very much wanted to be there. So I think that might have in some ways helped the fact that I knew, like, even though the relationship with my family was complicated, that they did care about me. They just had a weird way of expressing it. Yeah.
Did you say, go ahead, Fernando.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask, because I was wondering what your experience was looking back at those situations now that you're much older and sort of think through things in a certain way. Yeah, like, was there anything that was complicated to, like, it's just difficult to accept of the things that you experienced when you were much younger?
I think the most difficult, so maybe we'll touch on this a little later, but I'll like predecess it if anything now. One of the most difficult things for me to accept as an adult was that my mom was human, and that like I could allow myself to have the fond memories and the love of her that I did when I was a child, while simultaneously recognizing that like having an intimate relationship with her now, or like a very close relationship with her now, would not necessarily be a bad thing. And it wouldn't be disrespecting or, you know, dishonoring or erasing the like pain that she brought me, to also recognize that like there were things that she did and like stuff that she was that were still good in some ways. And I think that was hard for me because like my family, I feel like in many ways hasn't accepted that. Like a large chunks of my family, like they have so much trauma and so much pain with her. Like I said, like growing up, my mom was like, all the attention, all the resources, like everything went to like, we have to keep Amanda safe and like sane, and like we have to keep her like in school. So there's lots of complexes and trauma there that I think is like really hard at times for my family to like, and I can't blame them. Like it's just hard to remove that from the relationship. And I think that for me, being around them and loving them all so much, like it was really hard for me to recognize like maybe my mom isn't just like the bad guy. Like maybe my mom is kind of not a good person and makes horrible choices and puts me and my siblings in like some of the most horrible situations I can't even possibly imagine. But like she's still human, and there is still this part of her that I think really does think that at times she's doing good, when really, like there was this situation where my sister had like never, I almost don't want to, I'm not even going to talk about it just because it's like, it's my sister's thing and I don't want to like, that's not mine to air. But she's just done some stuff where it's like, I can tell, like, there's a part of you that thinks this is the right thing to do, but it's just so clearly not the right thing to do. Like, you're just stirring up trauma for people. Yeah. So I think that was probably the hardest thing to accept for me, was that she's human and that I could, like, love her while also recognizing that she's bad. And I still struggle with that. I often think to myself at times, like, I often wonder, and maybe this will sound harsh, but I think it's real. Like, I often wonder, I'm like, how will her death affect me? Like, when she does pass away, like, will I cry? And like, will I allow myself that? Like, and there's a large part of me that doesn't know. That's like, I have no clue what's going to happen when that happens. And yeah, but there's also part of me that is grateful that I'm like, I know my family cares about me. Like, the rest of my family really, really deeply cares about me. I know my boyfriend cares about me. I have a really fantastic support network of friends. So I'm like, I know that I have places that I can go to, like, process that, where I won't have to, like, feel vulnerable, like, to be vulnerable, but not feel vulnerable, if that makes sense, right? Like, that I can open that up and be real, but not feel like someone's about to, like, get at me for it. But yeah, so deeply complicated.
And you know, the insights that you have, and you must have been getting these insights from a very young age, really, I don't think you would have gotten these insights without this kind of turmoil.
Oh,
It's made you grow up. It's made you look around you. It's given you wisdom for your young age, I would say. So let's segue, if we may, pivoting out of Act 1 into Act 2. So let's kind of go into middle school and high school and all the way through college. Given your experiences and your background, where did the idea of a love for the arts come, and how did that sort of really start manifesting itself? Let's say, you know, around high school, or whenever you decided. When did you start to decide that, hey, this is really who I am?
Yeah. So this actually, we'll start with, so around 5th, 6th grade, I started getting bullied really severely for being gay before I even really realized I was gay. And so I had, like, very tight, select groups of friends. I remember in 6th grade, I think his name was Mitchell, but there was a kid named Mitchell, and Mitchell and I were playing one day, and we would, like, I was, like, really into anime. I mean, I'm still into anime, but, like, I was really into anime in like, elementary school. We're, like, playing, like, Cowboy Bebop or some stupid nonsense and just running around being goofballs, right? And I think I, like, pretended to die, and this kid Mitchell was like, "You're a really good actor." He was like, "You're really good at that." And I was like, "Thank you, Mitchell." And it just a passing thing, right? So then I go into middle school, and it, like, got just way worse there. Like, everybody was like, "You are a homo." And I was like, "No, I am not." Staving off the inevitable. But I was, like, looking for a place to be, and someone had mentioned, like, I became friends with these, like, group of emo kids, and they were like, "Oh, well, we're gonna try out for Mr. Dingman's the theater festival, like, it's really cool." And they were, like, my home in many ways, and they, like, never made me feel bad about being gay. Or, well, I didn't know I was gay. They would always be like, "Holden, you're gay," but they would never do it in, like, a mocking, like, "You're gay and we hate you." Like, it was always like a, "Holden, like, come on." And they'd be like, "No, I'm not." And then eventually I did. But so they always made me feel kind of, like, safe. They were some of my, like, first friends that I really had that felt like a good group, like a kind of a safe spot, so to speak. And so I was like, "Okay, I'll do theater with y'all. I'll try out with y'all." Someone told me one time that I would be a good actor, that kid Mitchell. And I loved it. I was addicted. Like, I did, it was called DTASC, Drama Teachers Association of Southern California. And the idea was, like, you would, like, there were categories and you would perform pieces, and every spring, and then you would go to a drama festival with all your, it wasn't like a team, just, like, with your other drama kids. And oh man, like, I was addicted. I did not ever win anything. Because we were not, like, a winning team. We didn't really place or anything like that ever, really. We just went for the experience, I guess, because we never really got to win. But I don't know. I loved it. I loved being in like a different person's shoes and talking was something I was good at. So I was like, hey, look at this. Like, I can do this. Yeah, so I guess that's kind of where it started for me, was with Mitchell making that comment and finding like a safe space in the drama department, even though I still was tormented by certain people in there. But like there I kind of had the upper hand because I felt good. Like I was like, oh, I'm a good actor. So like,
Right.
you can call me gay, but like I'm good. So.
And where was this? What high school was this?
This was actually Valley View Middle School.
And then where did you go to high school?
So I went to high school at Santa Susana High School. We're a magnet school for the performing arts.
And that's where you met my daughter, I think.
Yeah, that's where Kami and I met and became pals.
Right.
That was a good time. Yeah, we did so I went there from middle school, and that was a really, really great time. I remember going to, the reason I went to Santa Sue was because that group of emo kids that I was friends with, they were like, they were all in 8th grade, I was in 7th, and they were like, we're going to Santa Sue. And the way they talked about Santa, it was like the Holy Land. It was like, oh my God, like there's gay people everywhere, and everyone's, it's the 3 Gs, goths, geeks, and gays. You've got to go. And I was like, I need, like, largely in part probably because it was like, all my friends wanted to go, but they also did have a drama program, and I was really enjoying drama. Right. And like I said, my family always elevated and uplifted me. So they were like, oh, if you like theater, then go to the theater school. And so I was just like, all right, I'm going to do it. And the year that I applied was the year before they used to require like an admissions essay. You had to write an essay about why you wanted to go to Santa Sue. The year that I applied, they didn't have the essay, and I was like, woo! I was like, I don't ever want to have to write a fucking essay. So, but I got in. I was so excited, and I think Santa Sue is really where I feel that I came into my own. Like I was so shy, not shy, like shy kind of, like I was so used to being bullied in elementary school and being so sensitive in everything in elementary school and in parts of middle school, and always having to be on the defense, right? Because everywhere I went, like I was known as like, oh, Holden's the gay kid. He's the one that like walking down the hall, you can like throw the F slur at, and just like, yeah, we all hate him. And so I was so used to being on the defense that like I came there and it was like, oh my God, like me being gay is like a good thing. Everyone is like looking for a gay friend. And so I really, really, really started to flourish and like started like developing like lifelong friends. Like my best friend to this day, first period of the day, we had PE, me and her. We met that first day of high school in PE, and I am still best friends with her to this day. Like I literally was talking to her right before we hopped on here.
That's beautiful.
Oh yeah, like incredible. And yeah, I really started to flourish there. I like was in the theater program, and that also helped because I was just doing so much all the time. I was creating. I mean, our school was like, we did each class, and there were like 4 or 5 theater classes, did 2 productions a year, which is like just mad. So I was just constantly working and creating, and yeah, loved Santa Sue. Sorry if I'm rambling.
No, I love this. This is fascinating. And all of the depth of your experience found a place to go. You know what I mean? Like you have this wonderful creative spirit, and it was all kind of bottled up until you were able to express it. And all of a sudden you can go, wow, not only can I express it, not only am I doing it with my people, but I'm doing it in front of an audience where they get to feel what I'm feeling. We get to share an emotional experience.
Yes.
I think that's beautiful. Now, so you and I have another, if you don't mind me doing a little aside here. If I've done my research right, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You and I have a shared connection, and that is when you got to Moore Park, you were Petruchio, I believe.
Yeah, I was.
I was Petruchio at Pierce College back in the day. But I saw that picture and I go, oh, look at that. That's such an awesome connect. Okay, so how was your Moore Park College theater experience?
So I went to Moore Park for like a year, and then I dropped out and went to beauty school. That's a whole other ordeal. Which went to beauty school, did this whole thing, went back to Moore Park College like 2015, I think. I was gone for like 3 years.
Yes.
When I went back, that's when I started to do a little bit more of the theater, and so the only reason I landed that role of Petruchio was because I was in a social psych class, and this girl who I was friends with, I can't even remember her name now. I think it was Jeanette, maybe, but she was so quirky and fun, and she turned to me one day and she's like, "Are you auditioning for Taming of the Shrew?" Because I had told her that I used to do theater, and I was like, "No, I don't know, maybe. I love Shakespeare, but I don't know if I would." And she was like, "I think you should. It's supposed to be gender bent, and I think you'd be great." And I was like, my gay ass would love nothing more than to play Katerina. I was like, Wouldn't that be awesome? I'd lose a finger to play Katerina. Like, I was like, please, God.
I know, right?
Be on stage in full drag and just get a whole show to just be mean to everyone and be like, yeah, I'm angry. And I was like, please, God. So I auditioned for Katerina. I had good reason to believe, which this might just be my like confidence speaking, but I was like, I have good reason to believe that I could very well land this role of Katerina. But then they decided to just go traditional, but I landed the role of Petruchio. So I was like, oh, that's cool. This is like a really good time.
I agree.
That was actually, the Moore Park College theater experience for me was actually really challenging in the beginning, because so at Santa Sue, we kind of do, our theater program is what you might describe as like guerrilla theater. You just kind of like, we would be like, okay, we're gonna rehearse. So get your script and just get up there and just try stuff out. And like, there would be no like, okay, you want to walk in from there? Just go, just walk in and do stuff. And it was great. I think it was like a nice place to explore things and to do stuff. However, like when you don't have that like structure, the production doesn't always look as like beautiful as it could. And it also makes it really hard when you're in a college environment and you're working with John Loprino, one of the theater directors there. And he is like used to like, okay, so you're gonna walk in upstage left through that exit, you're gonna walk about 5 steps down this way, you're gonna land there, you're gonna look to the right, like for everything. Like every line, it was like, oh, you're gonna walk here, you're gonna do that, turn on that line, do this. Very, very like laid out, wanted really specific stuff, which is normal. But for me, I was like, I'm used to never writing my blocking down because I'm kind of going. So this is a little wild for me.
Right.
And so I like had to like totally adapt and like change because I was so used to the open kind of free form, figure it out, we're going to make it work kind of style, that I had no idea how to function at all. Like I was like, what do I do? And I ended up doing well, and I really do I have a very deep appreciation for that now, for the specificity of everything, for the craft of it. But yeah, it was very difficult in the beginning.
Well, good. That means it challenged you to grow, and that's always a good thing. So let's modulate into Act 3, and I have a feeling that Fernando is going to have a lot more to say about this Act 3.
I mean, with Act 3 being like PE, I think the best way to sort of dive into that was this. I was just thinking about what you said, because you said that you did theater in high school, and then you did it like you were at Moore Park, left, came back, did theater again. But for, I guess, like for everybody listening, you mentioned that you graduated with your degree in communication studies. It's like you did theater, but then went to beauty school, came back, did theater, and ended up in communication studies, and are still sort of doing performance. It's like, how did that happen? Like, how did you go from doing theater, and I assume that that's what you wanted to do, to doing beauty school and then doing it again and then not doing it? Like, how did Like, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like, what?
Yeah.
What did you know?
So I did theater all throughout high school. I tried to get into Cal Arts. It was the only college I applied to. I wanted to go because I went to a really fantastic, I think Cambria might have gone to Cal State Summer School of the Arts. CSUN.
She did, yes.
I think we went the same year.
You did.
We did. But so we went to CSUN. I loved it. And I was like,
That's
I
great.
want to be on this campus making art for the rest of my life. I applied to Cal Arts, paid the $70, and they sent me back a big fat no. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do after high school.
I got no plan B.
Woo! So I went to, I wound up at Moore Park, did Moore Park for a little bit, dropped out, went to beauty school. Still, so I went to Moore Park being like, I'm going to get a psych degree so I can get into my characters' minds better. And then I dropped out of there. Then I went to beauty school being like, I'm going to use beauty school as an into the film and TV industry. Halfway through beauty school, I was like, I hate this so much. I had like this huge existential crisis and was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. What's my purpose here? Realized I was like, okay, well, I got to at least finish this thing and then I can figure that all out. Finished beauty school, started working at a massage studio, and my coworker was going back to Moore Park. And I was just like chatting with her about it. And I started to realize I was like, I miss college so much. I was like, I miss going to school and like the social aspect, all of that, right? And mind you, at this point, I had been doing theater on, off. Like I had been doing, the Santa Sue has this thing called Troubadour Classical Theater Company. And basically it's like they pull in alumni, current students, administration, faculty, and professionals from the industry. And they all come together and put on a classical theater production. So I had been doing that like on the side once a year as like my little like, okay, like I'm still doing stuff. And I was just like, I wanna go back to school. I think I'm gonna try and get a business degree so I can open a salon or something. And I'll just keep doing my theater stuff on the side. And go back, I took one communications course. It was a rhetoric of pop culture course with Roland Petrello. Changed my life. Like literally, I did not realize that there were classes that you could take where you could like look at like media artifacts basically and be like, what does this mean? Like, what does this say about our society? So I fell in love with the class, hated the business course that I took. I was like, this is so boring, like, ew. So I was like, no. I was like, let's go comm studies. Let's go comm studies. Fell hard in love with comm studies. And then that same professor, Roland Petrello, looped me in. He was like, I really want you on the speech team. And I was like, okay, I'll join the speech team. The speech team had like an acting portion, and that like really got I was like, oh man, like, because I had done the productions at Moore Park, but they were typically over the summer, really quick. And then like I'd go back to, it was like almost like I was like a superhero. Like I'd be like, all right, like for these 6 months, like I'm vigilante art boy. And then I'm back to like my comm studies and being all little college student. So I started doing the speech team, and there's like an acting portion to the speech team. It's called oral interp, which is basically you take pieces of drama, pieces of prose, poetry, and you perform them. And it's kind of like art with an argument, you know, because you might be the whole point is you're trying to do something to put a message forward. Although there's a whole debate there in the speech and debate or forensics community about that, but we don't touch on that really. And it just got me. I was like, oh man, I was like, I really love this. In the meantime, mind you, I was dead set on going to UCLA. I wanted to go to UCLA for their comm studies program so bad. I had a guidance counselor tell me, like, when I got back to Moore Park College that I should look at more realistic schools and all this other stuff, which was really frustrating because I was like, I'm like basically a straight A student. Like I had a shitty semester the year that I left, but like I can do this. Like I have no doubt in my mind I can pass all these classes with flying colors. But it was like basically UCLA, was the top choice, was the choice. And I was so, again, just like Cal Arts, I was like, I'll get in. Like, I'm putting in the work. I've got, you know, national titles in speech debate. I'm going to get into UCLA. I helped my friends who did get accepted to UCLA with their UCLA essays. Like, and that's not to say that they didn't do a great job. Like, they did wonderful. We all were helping one another, I should say. But basically, I was like so sure I was going to get in. And CSUN was like the second choice. I was like, that's there if everything goes wrong. Well, spoiler alert, everything went wrong and I did not get accepted. I was devastated. I was like, oh my God, like, because all my friends did. All of my friends got into UCLA. And I was like, okay. So I was trying to figure out, like, what can I get excited about at CSUN? Like, what is something, like, the speech team really, like, gave me something to do and to have while I was in college. And so I was like, well, what can I find at CSUN? And CSUN had a speech and debate team, but I had decided that I kind of wanted to move away from the speech and debate thing. And then I found that they had the performance ensemble. And I was reading about it and I was like, making your own performances. Like, I was like, this sounds like all the good stuff I loved about speech without any of, like, the competition or any of that. And that's not to decry the competition or anything. Had a great time in speech, loved it. But I was like, this sounds so great. So yeah, so I was like, well, I guess I'm going to go there. And it also just so happened so perfectly to be nested in the comm studies department. So I was like, well, it's like literally perfect. Why would I pass up this opportunity? So that's kind of how I wound up where I'm at, I guess, if that makes sense. I don't know if that all tracks.
No, it totally does.
Yeah, because that's the thing too. Because we met in spring, right? Because I can't really remember.
I think
Is it brief?
yes, because yes. Because I didn't do CSUN. I wasn't on campus basically at all my first semester at CSUN because I had just moved to downtown LA and I was like, I don't want to commute that hour. And then I hated every single one of my online classes. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like heartbreakingly.
I need humans.
Yeah, exactly. And at the same time, I was also taking Professor Gina Giada's comms and tech class, and was just like, which is like inspirational. Like, it's just incredible. You're just like sitting there doing such like good work. And I was like no substitute. And like, I remember I talked to her about it afterwards and she was like, yeah, like I would hope that this semester, I hope the course and then your experiences online would show you that like there are dire consequences when we remove the human body from things. Like,
I so agree.
The body out of it. And I was like, yeah. So that's why then I was like, well, then if I'm going to be on campus, I might as well just do performance ensemble. Guess I'm there.
Mm-hmm. So when you got to PE, what did you think of it when you first entered the room? Was it the way you pictured it was going to be?
No, not at all. I guess I thought it was going to be more, I don't know. I think I was still kind of in some ways in speech mode, which is super like polished and, everything is constructed to really try and drive home like an argument, like you could have the same piece and cut it like 10 or 15 different ways to try and have it like hit on specific points and make a specific argument, right? And then the PE experience was just so like, yeah, we're all gonna sit around and we're gonna write some poetry. I was just like, okay, like, I guess we're gonna do that. That was kind of that's still been a learning thing for me. I talked about it with Jade. It's like I want to have this like tight grip of control over it all, and Jade's just like, no, like we're not gonna do that. We're gonna loosen our grip a little bit and let things grow and flow.
I love that. I mean, do you think, okay, let's say now you were given the reins. Okay, you were saying grip and control. Okay, now loosely or gripping hard. Let's say you are now put in charge of a PE show. What would it, given your experiences, what would it be about?
Oh God. That's a big question. Lord, I don't know.
How would you approach it then? Let's say this, without necessarily picking a topic, given the fact that Jade comes in and lets us discover, how would you approach that kind of again, you're in the driver's seat. How would you approach putting a show together?
I don't know. That is a really...
I stumped the guest, Fernando.
Yeah, and just for context, I feel like PE has this thing about it where every single semester we always try to do things properly, and it just never goes the way that we want it, right? It's just like it's controlled chaos, I think, the entire semester until suddenly we're performing. And it's funny that you mentioned that, Holden, that you sort of wanted to have like a tight grip on things. It's just like the way that you create, and then that's the thing too, because you have a very like vibrant and playful sort of personality when you're in the room, but also you can get things done, right? Like you can put order back in a room. And it's almost ironic that you ended up in that specific room because it's a mess. Like we're all a mess. Like that's just what we are. So yeah, I guess like going back to Jefferson's questions, like how would you even approach any of that knowing that nobody has succeeded in trying to get a show ready within like the first half of the semester? It's never happened, right? So how would you even approach it?
I don't know, because like it's the size. So the size is such a big part of the issue. Like I put that in air quotes because it never ends up actually being an issue, right? Like it is an issue, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh, we're okay. Like we're here, we're doing it, it's great. People are vibing, like this is wonderful. Because like, so I have that independent works project, whatever you'd like to call it, that Jade was mentoring me for. And it was like me, Trina, and Sir. And like we would go in that room and we would get like so much done in an hour and a half. And not just like, because I had a whole script laid out and I had lots of stuff laid out. But like sometimes we would spend time like actually building like pieces for because I'd be like, and the dance happens here in the script. And we would spend time doing that, but we would like create something and like love it, right? I feel like the size is a big part of what makes things like so complicated, I guess, maybe. But the size is also what makes it so beautiful, because it's like so many different minds coming together to like create something unique and new. I almost worry that I would mess up what I love about PE if I were given full control, because like one of the things that I really love about what PE did for me is it like allowed me to recognize the importance of like a lack of structure when it comes to creating things, and how you can like really come to new junctions, new innovation, and new creation if you're allowing yourself like the wiggle room almost. Like there's so much stuff that we have done that I look at and I'm like, I would have done that differently. But I don't mean that in like I would have done that differently. Like I mean that in like I would have done that differently. But this is like beautiful. Like Jessica's the laying the flower petals out piece, right? Like I love noise. I love being loud. I was like, you remember I think you were in there when we demonstrated, and I like, so we have this piece, Jefferson, which I think you might have seen, where Jessica like, you know, she
Yes.
they lay out that big the big black fabric, and they put marigolds on it in the form of the American flag, and it's beautiful, right? And Jessica had been like, I really want you as like the only the only like white male basically in the class to like kind of come in and disrupt it or stop it somehow. And I was like, okay. And I love noise. And so I was watching Jessica do this, and I was like, this is so peaceful and beautiful, and like how jarring would it be if just the loudest, most ugly noise happened right now before. And so we're in this tiny room, Jessica's doing this thing, no one knows what's about to happen, and then from the corner of the room I just like, hey, at the top, like just deep guttural, like hateful, like I was like channel hate, just be angry.
Right.
And like everyone like like I go and I'm like messing it up, and like Reem and folks were like, I wanted to hit you. They were like, I was so angry at you in that moment.
Right.
And go, right? And like, that's how I would have been like, that's the way to do it. Like, get the audience angry. But Jade was like, no, like, you need to be quiet. You like, the disruption needs to be something like so much more subtle and like down to really like, to make it almost to hit you deeper almost, and to not go for like, shall we say, like the cheap shot of like the loud out of the silence. And again, like I would have done it differently, but like the way it ended up, I feel beautiful, like truly like a really, really effective piece. And saying things like a little bit differently. And yeah, and so I think like if I were allowed to have like tight control over like, this is what it's gonna look like, I feel like I would in some ways lose the things that I really loved about it, which was like everything would take on so many different shapes and textures and you know, feelings. And
I agree.
Yeah, and I don't know if I could ever truly, I think Jade's got a really good really good corner on the market right now in terms of.
I agree. I think I'm a big Jade fan. And what she does, just to echo what you were saying, is she gives all of us the room to explore. And I would always trust her as the big picture person to say, I just echoing what you said, okay, I know you think that works, but it'd be better if this, from the audience's perspective, because what I learned, if I may interject this now, and you guys tell me how you feel about it, but what I learned at PE, having theater background, is that, you know, you always have to keep your audience in mind. Like you express yourself, you want to make sure that you get out of you know, coming from a deep point within you, because the more honest and vulnerable you are, the more you'll draw the audience in. But ultimately, it's for the audience's benefit. And if we lose that sight and lose that perspective, it won't have nearly the impact that Jade basically being in charge and letting us all go crazy and then reeling us in. I always felt deep appreciation for her way that she always had the audience's perspective in mind. And I think, Holden, like you said, I always found her choices, her suggestions to be just so powerful. So, hey, since this is about performance ensemble, I guess two things. One is, what would you tell somebody? Because Fernando and I, when we were teaching at CSUN, we would say to our students, you guys got to check it out. It's not what you might think. It'll surprise you, and maybe you'll find things inside of you that you'll be so happy. Someone said, hey, I'm going to give you room to explore this. What would you say if you were trying to encourage someone to participate in performance ensemble?
So from a non like spiritual place, I would be like, it will make you feel at home on campus. I mean, like one of my favorite things about speech and one of my favorite things about PE was that I felt like I had a home, you know, like I felt like there was a place for me to be on campus. If I didn't have class, or if I like had a long break period or something got canceled, I knew like I have people here that I can be with. I have a room I can go to if I need to. Like that was really, really helpful for me. And that was a really, really powerful tool for me. And so I would say that as like maybe like a surface level thing. On a more spiritual or like creative level, it's liberating. Like it is so empowering to like go into the room and to say, I have an idea for this thing. Like I want to do a piece about my anxiety, or I want to talk about animal cruelty. And to have like a group of people who are just like, well, let's elevate that. Like, how do we do that? What are we going to do? And to build something from nothing with a group of people is just such a powerful experience. As an actor, I don't know if you can speak to this Jefferson, but like as an actor, I always felt kind of stifled and limited because I was like, I am at the beck and the whim of the script. If the script says that I'm an asshole, I'm an asshole. Like, this is an improv. Like, I have to like do what the script says, and I can build all this stuff underneath it, right? And like have a good time there. But so little of that is actually like displayed, really. And like you don't get to you get to perform that, but it's not always as satisfying for me, I think. Like, I think it's not as satisfying. I like to, not for the work to be seen, but like if I'm trying to make a point about something, I want the point to be seen. You know, I want that to be something that could be deduced and picked up. Whereas a lot of the work that's done in theater is subtextual. It's a lot of like, you know, I played Dracula at one point, and it was a lot of like, how do you humanize the deeply inhuman? And you can do all that work, right? And like maybe people will pick up on it, but a lot of the time, like, they might not. And then you've just like done all this work, and they were just like, wow, that was a great Dracula. And like, that's fine. That's not bad. But like, it's so liberating to like have the ability to create something that I'm like, this is my artistic vision from like beginning to end, and like other people input and like built upon it and made it more what it is. But like I created this, and like that feels, I don't know, that feels really good. It was really empowering for me. Writing like I talked about the mentorship thing, that was super powerful. And like I still sit around every now and then and I'm like, I should write another one of those. I'm like, I should just find some other piece of lit and just pick it up and email the author and just try and make something. Because that was I loved working on that, even though we never got to perform it. Like, one of my favorite things, right. My favorite experiences that I've had with both Sir and Trina.
Love it.
I'm just gonna cut you off real quick, JD. Only because you mentioned something, Holden, about one of the things that you enjoyed the most about PE was the fact that it felt like you always had a family. You always had people there, and it's interesting because because that's something that I also experienced, right? Because I like had done it for so long, and one of the things that I realized is I had a hard time letting go of every single group of people that I worked with semester to semester, because it's not a club, right? It's not like one of those things where people can stay there for a long time. Because like some people are only there for 2 years because they transfer and then they're out. Or some people are only there for a semester before they graduate because they found it in the last semester. How was that for you? Because I mean, eventually you and Trina became one of the most like seasoned members there, right? Which is crazy because I still remember when you were new, and now it's like you're one of the most seasoned ones. But how was that for you? Because you were in 3 semesters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how was that to sort of navigate the feelings of like, okay, well, you have this family, but half of these people are gone, and then it's the next semester and the next semester, and so how was that?
It's awkward because it's like every group has like such a different energy, and so like you always kind of want it to be just like last time. Like, even if last time wasn't great, you're like, at least I'll know how to like, you always want to just look a little bit like last time, and then it's totally different, right? Like, I went into this last semester thinking, oh, this is going to be just like first semester, and then like so few people came back. It was like almost all new faces, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is like odd. Like, this is like not how it feels totally different, right? And like, I don't know, it's kind of awkward. It's like weird, but then it's almost like finding a new little family every time, and like the space that you all occupy like changes shape and everything, but it still feels like home, I think. Like, I still, like, even with the last group, like, still felt very much at home. Yeah, I don't know. Does that make sense? I think that it changes shapes. It becomes different. It maybe feels awkward at first, but it always eventually comes to fit like a shoe, like a very comfortable shoe. Like it's like this is right. It feels comfortable. It feels good. I think sometimes maybe if folks have like a bad energy, that can feel a little off or a little odd. But I think often folks, their energy kind of adjusts to the group, or the group adjusts in such a way that the energy doesn't necessarily feel negative, or like the impact of that energy isn't like as felt necessarily. Yeah, I would say maybe that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Jade has always created this sort of environment where you feel it's a safe zone, as she also lets you know the expectations, whether spoken or unspoken, which is we're going to bring things out of you. And that's just going to be the way it goes, but it's going to be cool because everyone's here is going to support you. You know, Holden, like you were just saying, I've got an idea for a thing. Yeah. And I can't wait to show up because I know people are going to support me and they're going to jump in and say, oh, I know what we could do. And now there's complete collaboration. So, but I agree, man, that the group always has a dynamic, and you and I know from shows, like every show, there's always like a camaraderie thing that emerges. But I think Jade, because of her leadership, makes sure, whether or not it's outwardly spoken, I think she just quietly corrals everyone, and all of a sudden you find yourself connected.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to honor your time, my friend. So I don't know if, I'm pretty sure Fernando sent you this. We want to kind of wrap up with 3 things, a little trio of things. So the first is we want to ask you to tell us a joke or a funny story. The second is if there's a quote that means something to you, right? And the third is a piece of music that really speaks to your soul, a song or a instrumental thing. So do you have any jokes, my friend?
How appropriate / inappropriate can they be?
This is PE, so what would you do in PE?
Oh, God.
Am I right when I say that, Fernando? Is that okay to give that as direction?
Fernando, like, maybe not.
Oh,
we'll hear it. We'll hear it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I have to remember how it goes. So there's a prostitute, and she's working, she's doing her thing, and a koala walks up, and he's like, hello, I would like to procure some of your services. And she's like, all right, like, money's money. So she takes the koala to a hotel room, they do their business, and then he gets up, and he walks out the door. And she's like, what the hell? And so she runs to the door and she's like, where are you going? And he's like, I'm leaving. And then she's like, why? And he goes, go look in a dictionary. And so she's like, okay. So she goes, she finds a dictionary, and she looks up the word koala. And there it says, plain as day, koala, a marsupial that eats bush and leaves.
I heard it. Might cut it out. I
don't No. You got to keep it, and then you just go. Hold. Here's.
We'll just add a disclaimer that if you ever see me in person, just ask me to tell.
What was that word? No, you don't cut it out. You go. A marsupial that eats, beep, and just like the Daily Show would do. So you can say, if you want to know what that word is, if you can't figure it out, ask Holden. Okay. Yeah. So there's. I love it. I hope we keep it, but we'll see.
Thank you.
All right. So then moving on, what is a quote or some saying that just kind of like, oh man, that's cool.
Yeah, I have it written down. Hold on, let me pull it up. So it's by this poet. I used to follow this Facebook page called Berlin Art Parasites. I think they still exist. And there's this other, it's an Instagram page and I think a Facebook page too called The Artidote. That is basically, it's run by this guy whose name I cannot remember right now, but they basically just like post art and pay credit to the artists, along with like quotes that they feel like kind of like match the vibe or the mood of the art. They have like, they'll do like mantras or daily meditations and cool stuff like that. And many years ago, there was this one that they put that I really, really, really loved by a poet. I do not know how to pronounce this name, but I believe it's Nayyirah Waheed. And it's just stuck with me for a really long time. So I'll read it. It's a little long, but I will read it. We have all hurt someone tremendously, whether by intent or accident. We have all loved someone tremendously, whether by intent or accident. It is an intrinsic human trait and a deep responsibility, I think, to be an organ and a blade. But learning to forgive ourselves and others because we have not chosen wisely is what makes us most human. We make horrible mistakes. It's how we learn. We breathe love. It's how we learn. And it is inevitable. And I think the thing that always gets to me is we have a deep responsibility to be an organ and a blade. Because even with just the work that I do on the Suicide Lifeline, like I hear people so often being like, I hurt them and I'm horrible. And I recognize that feeling. I've felt that in myself many, many, many times. But I do, and I will share this with people often. I'm like, that's part of life. Like you don't ever get through without hurting folks. And the important thing is not to never hurt anybody, but the important thing is to be willing to humble yourself and open yourself up to forgiveness, forgiving yourself, to the feelings that come along with hurting someone. Like, and I think that if we could all learn to like witness that and pay witness to those things in each other, like we'd all probably be a lot better off.
Wow, that is profound. I love it. And then lastly, I'm going to be thinking about that long after we hang up. So lastly, what's a piece of music that, and it can be from any part of your life, it could be something that you just heard yesterday, whatever. What is a piece of music that you can think of that just really speaks to you, and why?
Anyone who knows me is going to know that this is like so typical of me, but basically anything by the musician Joanna Newsom. I'm trying to think of a specific song that like really, really, really hits home for me by her. Hold on, I'm looking right now. But anything by Joanna Newsom, she's a really, really incredible artist.
Why?
She has a poetic that like no one else I know has. Like the way that she writes is so beautiful. She's like a classically trained harpist. Like she plays the harp. She plays like a bunch of other instruments as well. She has this like in her earlier albums, she has this like wild, like scratchy, almost like squeaky kind of voice that's like by many standards would be considered like not good. But I love it, and I love her music is just incredible. I think I would have to say off her most recent album, a song that really speaks to my soul would be The Waltz of the 101st Lightborn, which is a song that she wrote about like basically what would happen if we managed to like harness the power of like time travel and effectively created like multiverse theory and began to colonize like time, and like what like the dissipation of time as like a barrier and a limit would mean for like people and relationships and love. The whole album is about like what things do we have access to that are not subject to like time, basically, and to the sovereignty of time. And so there, I think she's trying to like kind of play with this idea of like what would happen if like time wasn't like a problem, like it wasn't like we could go back in time. And she talks a lot about like measuring love or like relationships, not in terms of like how long you've been together, but in terms of like how physically close you are, because time's no longer a thing. Because you 5 years ago would be a completely different thing if time travel was real, and like the you in that moment, the only way that that relationship might matter would be like the closeness, the proximity. She does it a lot more beautifully and talks about it a lot more beautifully than I do.
What I love about it, and Holden, you tell me if this is true. What I love about it is that she's exploring things that are just way beyond the I love you, you love me. I mean, there's still love. There's still a profound thing in there, but exploring it at such a depth. And dare I say, I think that's what Performance Ensemble does.
Yes.
It's not just a fluffy sitcom. It's exploring things in a deep way, but it still boils down to things that we can all still, no matter how complicated the subject matter, it boils down to things that still connect us viscerally as human beings, as emotions. I think, brah, don't do yourself a disservice. You, I think, exquisitely described that song. Now I can't wait to hear it. So,
yes, please. Oh.
So Holden Streetly, thank you for launching us on such a strong note. So, ladies and gentlemen, whoever you are listening from far and wide, you've been listening to CSUN Performance Ensemble presents A Conversation With. My name again is Jefferson Denim, and my awesome co-host is
Fernando Martinez. Quick thing, the song that Holden just recommended for us will be posted in the description, and then we're also going to have a playlist link there so that we can put all the songs that, you know, all our beautiful guests recommends. So make sure to look out for that too.
All right. So wherever you are, make sure you're taking care of yourself. Make sure you're being there, helping one another, loving one another. Thank you so much for listening to us today. We'll see you next time.